Hello, dear friends. Today we still have Washington on the 12th of June, Thursday, late at night, although most of my dear friends, my viewers, will see this video, well, probably the very first, early in the morning on the 13th of June, on Friday. An important event took place a little more than an hour ago, the war really began in the Middle East. It began with massive strikes in Israel on important objects on the territory of Iran, which include nuclear objects, military and infrastructure objects, as well as PVO systems. But this is not like what it was before. Such strikes, you remember, were the last in October last year. Now we are not talking about strikes, but perhaps about a long war, which, as the Prime Minister Netanyahu said, appeared here on American screens, which can last weeks or maybe months, but no one knows at all. Interestingly, just 3 hours before the beginning of this war, I was talking to some of the familiar analysts who are currently dealing with the relations between the United States and Israel about this pre-war situation, that there will be a war on nuclear objects soon. And we came to the opinion that from a rational point of view, it makes no sense to start this war with Israel, because, firstly, the United States does not participate in this. And Israel to solve these tasks that are in front of them, as it even follows from the statements of official Israeli officials for the media, that is, the destruction of the Iranian nuclear program. Israel has no opportunity for this. Well, a little further on this and now about how the tumultuous event is developing. Trump urgently calls for a meeting in the White House. To this day, he has often said that if he had once been president there, then there would be no war, 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 then there would be no war. But now such an opportunity has disappeared from him. One state, Israel, which, as everyone believes, has nuclear weapons, and another state which, again, no one really knows. According to the latest reports that are coming from Israel, from certain sources, Iran has been in the course of several days from the acquisition of a sufficient degree of enriched uranium to create nuclear weapons, that is, on a large scale. He already has a dirty bomb in his pocket. Trump urgently assembles this meeting, and at this tragic moment many American journalists find the time to make a bitter joke, only if the defense minister Hexet were sober. It turns out that problems sometimes arise in the administration of the United States, critical moments of the development of the situation in the world. Indeed, Trump was not just now deprived of the opportunity to say that there would be no war with him. That is, it happened to him, and it must be said, to a large extent, it happened because of him, because before he became president in 1917, there was a nuclear agreement, so-called, with Iran, according to which he had restrictions on enriching uranium. And there was a problem with the surveillance program by the corresponding international organizations for the state of this program. Trump suddenly came out, and since then, as he does not try to go back, it does not work. That is, Iran, the last statements of Iranian leaders sounded something like this, that they are not going to talk to such serious people as Trump. As a result, even Prime Minister Netanyahu does not know in what condition this nuclear program is, but for some reason it was decided just now. Why are we with the analysts that I am talking to you about today? Will it be or not? We came to the opinion that there is no rational reason for Israel to start this operation to destroy the Iranian nuclear program, because for this, you need to destroy nuclear reactors which produce this uranium of weapon quality. One of the local locations is Ford, located at a great depth. It is believed that there is only one non-nuclear weapon or product for the destruction of this object. It is called the GBU-57 MOP, American. Israel asked for this bomb from the United States during the first Trump condensation. It was rejected. Then, last year, during the Trump administration, the defense minister and director Mossad came here in dramatic tones, asked for this bomb. There is a report on it literally, if you do not hit it now, then in a week. That is the drawback of many Israeli leaders in drama. As much as they say in the American side, it all sounds like this, that. If you do not give now, do not help, do not participate with us, then in a week everything will be with the Iranians. A year passes, months and years, and everything remains the same. In a week it will be. So far there is no such thing, and in what condition it is not clear. Well, they do not have such a bomb there. Is a bomb, they have GBU-28, but it is not enough. Moreover, in order to carry GBU-57 MOP, the bomber needs at least B-2. Israel does not have it either. And in fact, it was possible to observe whether the United States would participate in this blow or not. They did not catch the bomber B-2, therefore there was no such bomb. Now, if the Israelis, as we agreed with this analyst, if the Israelis do not strike these reactors, but do not destroy them, then Iran has nothing to do. Iran is outraged and brings the matter to an end. As they say, there are only a few days left. Then they will definitely bring the matter to an end. By this enriched uranium, they have a rocket and the confrontation of two nuclear states begins. Therefore, based on the fact that the United States, especially during the administration of Trump, has become a relationship with the Israelis, that is, between Trump and Netanyahu, it does not matter at all. And recently Trump publicly warned that Israel, the government of Netanyahu, should not strike this blow. Therefore, we assumed that the Israelis would hardly go for it. That is, they will not destroy, but they will provoke Iran, and then the situation may be much worse in the same week or two than it is now. But Israel went its own way, indeed, if the situation is not resolved. Now, regardless of the relationship of the U.S. government to this matter, it is necessary to strike. The strikes were inflicted. Judging by the first, it took literally an hour and a half. According to the first data, the strikes were inflicted on nuclear objects. This is the information that came from Israel. On other military objects, it is necessary to rely on the PVO systems. In that case, Iran will try to strike a retribution. And what is also unique, all this operation, the Israelis took advantage of the Mossad inside Iran for the purpose of conducting sabotage operations. And in addition to nuclear, in addition to the PVO system, the main blow was also inflicted, and I think this was one of the most, maybe the main blow, was inflicted on the higher leadership, the military leadership of Iran and the leadership of the nuclear program. The first messages that came from Israel to the United States reported that in these very first strikes, almost all the highest military leadership of Iran was destroyed. And first of all, the general staff, and including the head of this general staff. In this sphere, Israeli intelligence played, as always, Brilliantly, they were covered with the first strikes. The strikes were inflicted by aviation. As I said, the Israelis did not have bombers to carry bombs, not the biggest ones, but generally even the medium ones. Therefore, the Israelis have to carry out mass flights by fighters. Well, they have less ammunition than bombers, so they fly here and there and inflict these precise strikes. That is, apparently the calculation consisted in the fact that, one way or another, the nuclear facilities will somehow be damaged, not destroyed, but damaged. Then the military command will be beheaded, there will be some confusion, and then the Netanyahu will speak and say that it will. Probably last for a long time. That is, for a long time they will liquidate all the higher leaders of Iran in the military, physicists, nuclear experts, just officials associated with the nuclear program, maybe politicians with such precise strikes. With hope that those who will remain specialists, they will not be able to further complete the creation of weapons uranium and put it on the warhead. First, they said that again information comes from highly established but not named sources from Israel. They say that after. This strike, Iranians can have a suitcase for a week, conditionally speaking, of this enriched uranium. Well, then you look there for a few weeks, maybe a month, and put it on the rocket. Then the Netanyahu speaks and still says that this process can last for months and years. That is, he actually pronounced now the phrase that I remember the Minister of Defense and the Director of the Mossad came here during the Biden. They said the same thing, or rather not the same thing, they said that faster. They say in a week, if you do not give us this bomb 57 dBU, then in a week Iran has nuclear weapons. Now it has already passed, I don't know, about a year and the prime Minister of Israel says that maybe a month or a year will be needed for this. In general, such a confusion, but in general, the Israelis considered it necessary to do this. It was a dramatic decision for them because the United States told them that they would not participate in this matter. This is definitely the case. That is, there is no need to think that somewhere there is something. Nevertheless, the Americans helped. The Israelis only told the Americans that they recommended removing members of the family of military personnel or embassy workers from the Middle East just in case, but in fact they did not say anything about what exactly they were going to do. The Americans were not actually prepared for this. Because if they were prepared in October during the Biden administration, then they were prepared to defend Israel from the counterattack of Iran. And they picked up the ships of the Navy in the Mediterranean Sea, in which there were many interceptors of missiles. These missiles intercepted those Iranian missiles, which, in response, flew to Israel. And there were such dramatic moments when there were up to 200 Iranian missiles in the air at the same time, and the flight time was 13 minutes, and there were only a few minutes for this anti-aircraft defense system of the United States and Israel. In order to either knock them down or take them somewhere in the direction, deflect their flight. And nevertheless, they overcame some of them, the anti-aircraft defense system of Israel and the American one. Well, it is believed that 100% of Iranians then did not try, but if they now want 100% in a counterattack, then the counterattack on Israel may be stronger. Maybe even catastrophic, because now, since the Americans were not prepared for this strike by Israel, the Mediterranean Sea does not have their ships with as many interceptors as they were in October last year. Moreover, just a few minutes, well, maybe half an hour after the beginning of the Israeli strikes, State Secretary Rubio Statement, a statement that was published on the website of the State Department. A brief but
краткое, но ёмкое и удивительное, потому что, значит, сообщил, что Израиль предпринял такую акцию, Соединенные в одностороннем порядке предпринял эту акцию.
full and surprising one because he reported that Israel took such an action. The United States took this action in unilateral order. The United States has nothing to do with this. That is, it was a message to Iran, do not strike and retaliate against us. We have nothing to do with this. The United States is primarily concerned with the safety of its citizens who are in the Middle East. And I must say what else is important about the representatives who came from especially associated with the special services, with the government of Israel who are here in Washington. It was on TV, in fact, literally 30 minutes before the beginning of the Israeli strike. The United States on unofficial channels reported to its allies in the region that Israel would make this strike, but the USA has nothing to do with it. And the only goal of the United States in this situation is peace. That is, the United States is not going to do anything at all and will only fight for peace in the Middle East. That was amazing. That is, as analysts note here, they will not remember how much they studied there for many, many years, if not decades. American-Israeli relations, they do not remember situations when the State Department in such a situation did not write in a red line in any statement that we will support Israel. Now, in such a phrase in the statement of the State Department of the United States, written in a red line, no, the United States did not promise to defend Israel in this situation. Nevertheless, the American representatives here express their own opinion that the Americans will not go anywhere and will defend from the return blow of Iran, at least because a huge number of American citizens live on the territory of Israel. If you want to protect them, then you will have to protect them, as before, from these Iranian missiles. But they believe that the U.S. Navy, the Navy with these rocket interceptors, is already on full steam going there to the region. And who did the Americans tell that Israel is going to strike? What kind of allies do they have? The Arabs, Saudi Arabia, the well-off. That is, those allies that appeared thanks to the last ferocious trip of Donald Trump. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, and Jordan, a traditional ally. Here is such a dramatic situation. The general opinion is that this matter will last for a very long time. Maybe the Israelis are going to destroy, eliminate the maximum number of people who are related to this program and to the planning of what can be done next with this uranium of weapon quality level. But from their point of view, this is, by and large, a Russian roulette. Because the main problem is that the presence of a working reactor will not be eliminated. And by and large, this is, in fact, recognized by the Israeli representatives themselves. That is, they want to create a situation in some way where there will be no one. Are they really going to knock out all the employees who work on these reactors? I just can't imagine. But the situation is actually like this. Now, the possible consequences. Naturally, I will talk about possible consequences. Looked through them here, thought through, for Ukraine, for the situation of the war that continues in its territory, and for the main, so to speak, participants in this. In the United States, including Russia, you can't go anywhere without it. As for Ukraine, the possible consequences, the attention of the world now switches from Ukraine to the Middle East. And when they say that the Americans did not participate there, did not help, maybe, yes, they did not participate, did not help, but we know that some time ago, a few weeks ago, the United States sent 20,000 rocket interceptors that were intended for Ukraine to Israel. That is, Israel turned to help. The Americans could have guessed that something important would happen there. Therefore, many analysts considered this act of Trump's administration as an anti-Ukrainian act. And now, in light of the new circumstances, it turns out that it was not entirely anti-Ukrainian. He is simply really conditioned by the events that were expected in relation to Israel and Iran. Now it is definitely clear that the attention will be switched from Ukraine to the Middle East and maybe for a long time. I repeat, everyone says, Israeli representatives, Americans say now on TV, that what Netanyahu thought and declared is largely a war, and a serious war. Well, from here, switching the attention of the international community to the Middle East poses a risk of reducing political pressure on Russia. However, that is, not everything is clear in the unfolding situation. In the United States, the EU can speed up the transmission of intelligence data and the PVO system to Ukraine, saying that chaos can spread to Eastern Europe. Well, because no matter what, Iran participates in providing military help to Russia. Iran is involved in what is happening in the territory of Ukraine, the danger that has arisen for the eastern NATO flank. Therefore, it is believed that the United States, NATO, and Europe can help Ukraine with the air defense systems and with intelligence data. Because if the fire in one area already ignites, then it must be extinguished in another. Also, people, the sources with whom I spoke, had time to talk, assume that, remember, we said that in light of the fact that the United States, in principle, turns this administration, turns the supply of further help to Ukraine after the fact that Biden signed and ordered to put, there are necessary ways we talked to them, and in particular we talked to you about the largest military, technical, and IT corporations with artificial intelligence. So it is believed that with them, the cooperation of Ukraine can begin to develop at an accelerated pace, by consciousness as they say. Remember this phrase, it is called the unblocked corridor of help for Ukraine, which must replace the help from the stream that flows from Washington. Russia wins with a cracker, since attention will be distracted from it. The price of oil has risen, and they expect that some kind of attention will be paid to sanctions, although I believe unlikely. Europe will bring these sanctions to an end, which Ursula von der Leyen declared a couple of days ago. But any Iranian escalation causes for Russia the growth of risks, for all the allies of Iran, including Russia. That is, now Iran is not just a separate state, but it is also a union, the axis of evil, and one way or another, this war, semi-nuclear or pre-nuclear, it somehow should touch the allies of Iran. In this regard, new sanctions of the United States against the countries that supported Iran are possible. I think Lindsey Graham, other sponsors of the bill that he is now pushing through the Congress can use this opportunity. We can hear about him. By the way, Lindsey Graham today, in my opinion, he published an opinion column on the Fox channel, quite an
достаточно такой
Optimistic
оптимистический
article
статью
with
с
estimates of the
оценками
prospect of accepting his
перспектив
bill.
принятия его законопроекта.
He
Он
said that all
говорил,
this will
что
happen and Russia will receive
это
a
все
full
состоится,
program.
и
That
Раша
is, this is
получит по
inevitable,
полной
he wrote.
программе.
Maybe he
То есть
knew.
это неизбежно, написал он. Может, он что-то знал по поводу приближающегося
Something about
удара
the imminent blow to
Израиля.
Israel. The United
Соединенные
States has a
Штаты.
dilemma, what to
Дилемма.
do, be an arbiter
Что
or be a
делать? Быть
participant. But I already told you what the situation
или быть
is.
участником.
The
Но
United
я вам сказал уже, какая ситуация. Соединенные Штаты будут,
States will
судя по
apparently
всему,
help
помогать
defend the sky of
защищать небо
Israel, but
Израиля,
this matter will
но
hardly
дальше
go
этого
further.
дела вряд ли пойдет.
Although
Хотя
Trump can
в
use
духе
escalation
политики
as a
Трамп
reason
может
to stop the
использовать
help of Ukraine,
эскалацию
such as
как повод
America
для
is in
прекращения
danger, let
помощи
Europe pay.
Украине.
But this
Типа
is
Америка в опасности, пусть Европа платит. Но это
one of
один
the
из
options.
вариантов.
He has a lot of
У него
options, you understand.
ресурсов,
Although,
понимаете?
on the other hand, anti-Trump
Хотя, с
circles
другой
and their
стороны,
number is now
антитрамповские
growing.
круги,
Well, it's
а их
enough to look at the
количество сейчас
Congress of the
растет.
United
Ну, достаточно посмотреть на Конгресс США,
States the
Сенат,
Senate,
там
there
уже
are already
84
84 for the
за
Biden bill.
законопроект
Sorry,
Байден
Lindsey
против
Graham and
этого
Blumenthal,
самого
84
Лекса
out of
Блументала,
100.
84 из 100.
Already 70,
Уже
in my
за
opinion,
70,
fell into the
по-моему,
House of
перевалило в палате
Representatives, which in
представителей,
general
которая
was a
очень
magic
бардовская
House
была,
of
палата представителей.
Representatives. Well,
Ну
these
и
escapades.
вот эти эскапады,
Huts that
кульбиты,
Trump's
которые
administration has
последние
been
несколько
doing
дней
for the
вытворяет
last few days in Los
администрация
Angeles,
Трампа
now
в
in some other
Лос-Анджелесе,
cities,
сейчас
it
это
does not
в
lead to
других
the results
городах,
that he
она
planned for him.
приводит для него не к тем результатам, которые он планировал.
Now we have
Сейчас вот
questions of public opinion, according to which he
вышли
has a lower level of water,
опрос
a
общественного
rating on
мнения,
what he
согласно
does in the
которым
same lows.
у него ниже, как говорят, ниже уровня воды рейтинг по поводу того, что он делает в том же
Angels, in my opinion,
Лос-Анджелесе.
he has,
По-моему,
or
там
minus
минус
16.
11
Well, there
или
are
минус
two questions.
16.
One is
Ну,
how he
там два
copes with the
вопроса. Один,
crisis, or
как он
the
справляется с
situation in
кризисом,
California, and the
ситуацией
second is
в
generally
Калифорнии, а
immigration.
вторая вообще
There is
по
one, he has
иммиграции.
minus
Там
11
один
and the
минус
other minus
11 у него,
16.
другой
I don't
минус
remember what.
16, не помню чего, но
Well, this
это
is not the main thing
это
now, so the
сейчас не
opposition is
главное.
growing. It now
Так
has a
вот, значит,
leader, a California governor.
растет
Well, this is the
оппозиция,
current.
есть у нее теперь лидер, калифорнийский губернатор. Ну и вот эта
Situation, and now
сложившаяся
he will not
ситуация.
be able to
А
say that
теперь
I
он
am
уже не
so
сможет
terrible.
сказать, что
Everyone
я
is
вот
afraid of
такой
me.
грозный, меня все боятся, поэтому при
In my
мне,
opinion, as with
как
Catherine
на
II,
Екатерине II,
Chancellor
канцлер
Bezborodko
Безбородько был,
was, who was
который
at the peak of
на
the
пике
might of the Russian
могущества
Empire, he
доказавшегося
said,
Российской
without our
империи, говорил,
approval,
без
not a
нашего
single gun in Europe will dare to shoot.
заблаговоления ни одна пушка в Европе пальнуть не смеет. Ну, так
Well,
вот
that's how
примерно
Trump spoke
Трамп
about his great
высказывался о
persona,
своей
and now that's it.
великой
That
персоне,
is,
а
it's
теперь
not just a
все.
war,
То
but
есть
a
не просто
nuclear
война,
war,
а
a
это
semi-nuclear
ядерная уже,
war, a pre-nuclear
полуядерная
war.
уже, приядерная эта война.
Moreover,
Главный
maybe one of the
боевой
main
подставный
sources of this
источник
war
у
was
нее.
Trump
Это был
himself,
он
because
сам,
he
потому
broke
что
this
он
treaty.
развалил этот
He could
договор.
not
Он не
agree on
смог
how he
договориться,
promised.
как он
That is,
обещал.
they do not pay much
Значит, на него
attention to
внимания не
him.
обращают, так по большому счету.
In this
Дальше
context, the
здесь
opposition will probably
наверняка
be
будет
strengthened
ехать
by him, and
оппозиция
how it
Юрия.
is.
И
This will
как,
serve as a reason for
как
strengthening NATO
представляется,
and
это
for the
послужит
creation
именно
of a
для
coalition of
укрепления НАТО
democracies against the
и для
evil
создания
axis.
коалиции демократии против оси зла.
Iran, Russia,
Иран,
North Korea,
Россия,
now a probable behavior. How will it
Северная Корея.
behave? Israel.
Теперь
Israel.
вероятное поведение. Кто как себя будет вести? Израиль. Израиль все-таки
Still try,
попытается,
despite all the
несмотря на все
talks, to turn
разговоры,
the whole thing around to the
все это
blows,
дело
to the
как-то
exchange
так
of blows.
свернуть к ударам, обмену ударов.
That is,
То
avoiding a
есть
direct and
избегая
long war.
прямой и
Although, I
длительной
repeat,
войны.
now they are
Хотя,
talking about
повторяю, сейчас
war.
говорят
Well,
именно
how
о
will
войне.
this affect the war in Ukraine will
Ну,
distract the
как это
attention of
будет
the
влиять
West.
на войну в Украине, будет отвлекать внимание Запада. Иран.
Iran,
Иран,
as
как
expected, will
ожидается,
make an
нанесет
asymmetric
асимметричный
response through
ответ
its
через своих
proxies,
прокси
Yemen,
Йемен,
Syria,
Сирия,
Iraq.
Ирак. Хотя
Although a
ожидается
massive rocket
и
strike is expected, even
массированный
more
ракетный
powerful than in
удар,
October last
даже
year.
более мощный, чем в октябре прошлого года. И на
This
этот
time, there
раз,
is only hope
ну
that
только
the
надежда
entire
есть,
general
что
staff
весь
was
генеральный
destroyed.
штаб был
Therefore, in
уничтожен,
an hour,
поэтому
several hours, they will
за
not
часы, несколько часов они не мобилизуются.
mobilize. Will the American ships with
Успеют ли
their pro
американские
system arrive
корабли
there
со
or
своей
not?
системой ПРО туда прибыть или нет?
Therefore, they
Поэтому
say that
говорят,
if the
что
Americans do
если не
not have
успеют
time and if
американцы,
they
если
quickly strike back on the
быстро
full program
нанесут
of the
ответный удар
Iranians, a
по полной
catastrophic
программе
situation can
гарантии,
happen for the
катастрофическая
Israelis.
ситуация может сложиться для израильтян. Но
In
в связи с
connection with
этим
this,
возможно
there is a
обострение в
possible
Черном море.
escalation in the Black
Там же Хезболла опять
Sea,
и
Hezbollah
прочие,
5 and other activities, as the surrogates of Iran say.
как говорят, суррогаты Ирана. Соединенные Штаты.
The United States is activating, as expected, pressure on China. China, by and large, does not need this either, because it will.
Китай, по большому счету, тоже не нужно, потому что повышение цен, оно
Increase
произойдет
prices on oil. China does not need this at all. It needs low prices. And in general, all this program with the nuclear program of Iran, war with Israel, well, absolutely. They have their own problems with the economy. Therefore, God knows how it will all turn out. But as for the United States of America, it is expected that in this situation it can turn out as it pleases. Therefore, it cannot be ruled out that the United States will provide an anti-crisis package of assistance to Ukraine. This is in light of the fact that, as you know, now the budget is being considered in the Congress of the United States for the 26th year, the military budget, and there are no assignments allocated to provision of assistance to Ukraine on the initiative program of assistance to Ukraine. This is what, as you remember, there are two options for providing assistance to Ukraine. This is the presidential right to take out ready-made weapons from the Pentagon arsenals. There is nothing about the fact that this cannot be done. This line remains, but it is not specially laid into the budget. And the second line, which provided assistance for the provisions of the military-industrial complex for Ukraine, has disappeared from this project of the budget. But now, in connection with the unfolding situation, at least in order for Ukraine to somehow pinch Russia and to pinch Iran through Russia, the anti-crisis package of assistance is possible. The European Union strengthening the support of Ukraine to compensate for the destabilization of the region, and so, too much. Destabilization, it is necessary to stabilize it at least in some place. Therefore, there is an expectation of the supply of anti-air defense systems and satellite reconnaissance. In the last few days, there was information that Japan, first of all, took on the responsibility or promise to provide satellite images of an unpopular nature. Well, NATO increasingly takes on the responsibility of providing satellite reconnaissance of the territory of the eastern flank of NATO, and this includes the territory of Ukraine, which potentially replaces the possibility of saving American aid, and in this regard, the activation of NATO's work in this direction is planned. As for Russia, Russia will try to play on chaos and offer itself as a peacemaker. Russia has already offered somewhere just recently, literally recently, said that if the Americans agree with the Iranians, then, according to the reduction of this nuclear program, the excesses of this enriched uranium, Russia is ready to take on its territory. Here is such a situation, gentlemen, the second war, the regions are quite close to each other. There, with the addition of a nuclear element, you know, such a situation can happen. Before that, there were all the talks about nuclear Tula. Recently, I was analyzing Armada Hari about nuclear winter. But what is happening now, it did not mean, of course, it was probably news to her today when she heard through CNN what was happening. But nevertheless, the drama of this situation can finally force those forces which still have their reason to hesitate to think and make a rational decision to stop or to force some people who are bound by the power of the leaders of the Western states to stop cheap diplomacy and to think about the highest meaning of being, which is to be or not to be a civilization. This is the question. On this, dear friends, let me finish this special issue. I will keep you up to date with the current information in addition to how it will be delivered. And as always, the glory to Ukraine, to the armed forces. The enemy will be defeated, victory will be ours. To you, dear friends, endurance, courage, and firm faith in our inevitable victory. See you soon.
Скорых встреч.